Good evening, good afternoon, good morning to each one of you who has joined from different parts of the globe. I would like to welcome all of you to the ninth career guidance session as part of the LOBA Explore program on the topic entrepreneurship. I hope all of you are doing well. Now, I really wish to see all of you in person, but looking at the situation, I think this is the best thing which we could probably do. So let me start with my introduction. I'm Farik Naushat, 2011 CBSE batch. I have 13 years of memories in me about Loyola. I was one among the backbenchers in my class who used to visit the principal's office at least once every quarter. The frequency started increasing towards my 10th, 11th, and my 12th grade. But I was fortunate enough to have at least one of my classmates to assist me in every visit. And I served the school basketball team for 5 years. Speaking about my college days, I was yet another computer science engineer in town. During my early college days, I was not aware of what entrepreneurship means, and so that I couldn't even understand the word like what entrepreneurship means. So the thing is that during my early days, I've never went anywhere near the placement office in my college. So thing is that I was very clear that I wanted to do things which I believed in, and I've even rejected certain placement offers which I've got. My parents were not very happy about it. My parents were not very happy because my neighbors, uncles and aunties were not very happy about it. And I've sold T-shirts to cutlets during my early days of entrepreneurship. Long story short, I've built two companies prior to my current company. Uh, so one was in the food tech space, which was based in India, and the other one was in the IT software space that is based in Africa. Currently, I'm the co-founder and CEO of Greenic Private Limited. We are trying to solve the problems that is faced in India's agricultural system. I'm also a research student at IIT Kanpur, 2020 batch. It's an honor to be moderating this session. Thank you, organizers, LOBA, Father Principal PT Joseph, for giving me this opportunity. I have with me young Vaishnav, who is currently doing his 12th grade in Loyola, our Jupiter Jetsetters captain, a die-hard fan of cricket, who loves to explore places and watch off-road trips. It's a pleasure to have you, Vaishnav, as my co-moderator.
Thank you, Farid.
Yeah, sure. So the word entrepreneurship is usually claimed to be the process of building a business, or we usually relate it to names like Jeff Bezos of Amazon, Ritesh Agarwal of Oyo, or Elon Musk of Tesla. All these are very familiar names, very popular names. Who have built billions of worth of assets. Just by following entrepreneurship as a career path. But what I say is, I do have a different viewpoint to it, and to explain further, we have with us four of our dear brothers coming from different walks of life who has taken the leap of faith and risk to venture out on their own and who has been breathing entrepreneurship for years. So I would like to welcome the first panelist, Mr. Agustin Chandi, 1984 batch, currently residing at the UK. He is a private equity investor and also an advisor and mentor to multiple startups. Welcome, Chandi. It's a pleasure to have you in this session. Next, we have George Verghese, 1984 batch, currently residing at Bangalore. He's the CEO and co-founder of ET Labs, which is a global software company having millions in revenue. Welcome, George. Next, we have Dr. Saji Salam, 1983 batch. He's currently residing at Texas, the managing partner of Care Ventures Capital, which is an investment management firm based in Texas. He's also an investor in multiple startups across different sectors. Welcome, Saji, to the session. Our fourth panelist, P. Vijay Kumar, 1983 batch, currently residing at Trivandrum. He is the co-founder and CEO of INAP. INAP is a global software company that has big MNCs as clients. Welcome, Vijay, to the session. Last but not the least, I would like to welcome each one of you to the session. Father Principal, PT Joseph, parents, teachers, and dear brothers. So without wasting time, let's move on to the questions and discussions with the panelists. But before that, I would like to request all of you to attend the poll, which has been released. Basically, it has two questions. You can just select your option, click on the submit button. So now let's move on to the discussion. So the first question, PV. So just to explain a little more about Vijay Kumar, he's our ex-school leader. He's a debater, an athlete, and an NCC cadet during his school days. His experience in building high-performance teams would be definitely a takeaway for all of us. So Vijay, could you talk about your journey of being an entrepreneur?
Sure. Thank you, Farik, and lovely to be on this program. Let me quickly dive in to the subject itself because I know time is a little short. So after doing my engineering in Trivandrum and my MBA at the School of Management Studies, I didn't have the guts, or like Tariq, you mentioned, I didn't know what entrepreneurship really meant. And it was a natural course to kind of join a company, which I did, and was fortunate to join Castrol, which is a very aggressive organization. They sell lubricants, which most of you would know. It's been a fantastic experience, but about a year and a half into it, I started to feel very restless. And that's when I started to feel that I wanted to do something my own, largely perhaps given the fact that being on a sales job, the exposure I got was to a very limited function within a large organization. And the desire to kind of understand more, have a play in more of these was, I think, the larger motivating driver for that. After a couple of years, I quit Castrol. There was an opportunity that I was wanting to pursue, which was to set up a fiberglass plant or a downstream unit for a fiberglass plant, which was being set up in Goa. So I stationed myself in Mumbai for a while trying to study it. Very soon, I realized that the capital involved was far too high. The experience called for is not something that my confidence afforded me. And therefore, it didn't look like something that I really could pursue. So I came back, did have Castrol call me back, but I resisted that offer. And for about a year and a half, pursued different opportunities to kind of get started, from plastic blow molding to trying to start a network for homestays to home boats and so on and so forth. Many of them. So it was not an entrepreneurship journey that started with an idea and the clarity of this is what I want to do. It wasn't one either that really started off early saying I want to be an entrepreneur, but something that came on the way, and it was more the pursuit of just wanting to do it. And the idea didn't come. So it's after about a year and a half, a friend of mine named Aruna, who was in Mumbai, connected me to UTV, which is Roni Screwwala's company, and they were starting off with teleshopping, which I started off as a franchise for them. And that led on to a few more operations in trading, which I continued for about 3 or 4 years. It was finally in 1999 that I got to meet my current partners. These were all people senior to me, people from the IITs, the IIMs, with good backgrounds in education, like Wharton Business School. A lot of consulting experience. The CEO who started at that time was from IBM Japan. So a lot of good academic experience, a lot of good work experience. It was a phenomenal experience to be a part of that team. And that was about 21 years ago. Very happy for the decision to have kind of taken the entrepreneurship route. And how has it helped me? It really has helped me by giving a lot of freedom. And freedom is not really to do the things that you like, because that probably gets harder. As an entrepreneur, you might need to work a lot harder. But it's a freedom to kind of really carve out for yourself the progress of the company, carve out for yourself a culture which you can be proud of, and then eventually have the pleasure of seeing happy faces. And in many ways, spread the values in a group of people, much of those, which is what we learned at Loyola. Let me park there.
Thank you, Vijay, for giving a brief idea about your journey. Next up, we have Augustin Chandy. To explain a bit more about Chandy, he was our right school topper, engineering from CET, masters from IIM Bangalore, and MBA from INSEAD, which is by far the best B school in the world. So moving on, Chandy, the question is, from your perspective, how do you define entrepreneurship?
Thanks, Vaishnav. Good evening, everyone. My regards to the school management, the teachers and the parents, and of course, Chair Loyola Sons. So let me kind of jump right into the question in the interest of time. Generally when people hear about entrepreneurship, most people associate that with running your own business, which is by and large correct. And that's when you get the full experience of entrepreneurship. But I would say that even when you're in a corporate job, there's a lot of entrepreneurship which is involved. It may not be to the full scale, but there's certainly an element of entrepreneurship involved. I would even go further and say that as you manage your careers and your lives, entrepreneurship is a very significant factor in there. The way you manage your investments, your finances, your entire career. So all that is also kind of entrepreneurship. So, to define entrepreneurship, I would say that, it is really it's an attitude and it is a state of mind. And the best definition of entrepreneurship, which I have heard, goes as follows. Many people spend 5 days of the week trying to be somebody else so that they can spend 2 days of the week being who they really are. And entrepreneurship is really about spending 7 days of the week and as many weeks as possible in your life being who you really are. Now, there are, I would probably say there are 2 or 3 different ways in which people become entrepreneurs. The first one I would call as the obsessive entrepreneur. And, Farik, who spoke before me, will probably fall into that category. At a very early stage, he decides that come what may, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. I'm not going to work for anybody else. And some of them even start the entrepreneurship journey before they complete their formal education. Some others immediately after their education, but they never really go and work for anybody else. Then there's a second category who I would say is more the planned, systematic entrepreneur. And I would say Vijay, who spoke before me, is probably very close to that. So, you want to be an entrepreneur, but when you finish your studies, you know that you don't have the experience, you don't have the network to immediately start off. So you decided to gain all that at somebody else's expense, work for a few years, 5, 10, 15 years. And then you make a very planned entry into entrepreneurship. That's very systematic, very planned. And that I would say is a second route that people take. And there's a third route, which probably I belong to, which is what you call as an accidental entrepreneur. So, you kind of always had the entrepreneurial instinct, but then you don't mind working in a corporate job. You're happy, and you keep going in your career. Suddenly, one fine day, an opportunity presents itself before you. You kind of grab it. You don't really spend too much time thinking or planning about it. It's very instinctive, and you jump into it, and then you become an entrepreneur. And all of these are, there's no right way or right time to become an entrepreneur. Depending on how you choose, the risks are different, and your success or failure depends on how well you manage those risks. And some of the biggest brands in the world have been created by entrepreneurs in their 50s and 60s. So there really is not a right time which guarantees success or anything like that. And in terms of my personal journey, like when I was working, I happened to meet somebody in a train and we were chatting. And he said he's got a business which was in difficulty. And he thought that based on my conversation, I had some skill sets which could be used in the business. He asked me whether I could come and have a look for a couple of days and give him some advice. I did that, came back in about 3 weeks' time. I had a call saying that, that's interesting, but could you also tell us how we can implement some of your suggestions? Could you spend another 2 days? Did that. Again, after about 3-4 weeks, I had another call saying that, well, this is very exciting because those suggestions seem to be working. If you're interested, why don't you join up with the business? And the business owner offered that he would part with 50% of the equity to me. And he said, look, whenever we sell after 3-4 years, we can share the profits. So it took me another 3-4 weeks to quit my job and jump into it. Did that. After 3 years, we sold the business. And then I thought that's not a bad idea. Looked for other similar businesses. And over the last 10-15 years, picked up a few, burned my fingers in some, successful in some. And that's really where we are today. So I would say that's kind of my summary definition of entrepreneurship. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Chandi. So Chandi, what do you really mean by saying is that entrepreneurship is not just about building a business. It lies in everything. You can be an entrepreneur at your home. You can be an entrepreneur at your workplace. And also the fact that you have mentioned the 3 different stages or the different types of entrepreneurs. The compulsive one, the planned or the passionate one, who's more planned and organized, and the accidental one. Thanks, Chandi, for your insights. So next, let's move to Dr. Saji Salam. I would like to refer him as Street Smart Saji, known for his street smart activities during his school and college days while in Trivandrum. So Saji, how did you transition from being a doctor to an entrepreneur?
Yeah, thanks very much, Fareed, for that great introduction. And I think the English language gives us more credit than what we really deserve. So if I translate, the street smart into Malayalam, it would be something like this. തെണ്ടി തിരിഞ്ഞ് നടന്നവൻ കിഴക്കേക്കോട്ട പേട്ട കണ്ണമൂല എന്തൊക്കെയോ ചെയ്തു എവിടെയൊക്കെ എത്തി. I'm just messing with you, okay? So but just getting to the question, Fareed, and the answer is also there in what I just said. It is about the personality, So I wanted to be a jack of all trades, but at the same time, I didn't want to be hungry, right? So those days in the 80s, there were just about two career paths. You become a doctor or you become an engineer. You write the entrance exam and you get in. I wrote both the entrance exams and then I got into med school. And I got into med school, so I knew that now I will come out as a doctor, so I won't be hungry. So then I got to doing the other things I wanted to do, which is being a jack of all trades. So even in first year of med school, I was doing things like loan sharking. With some money that was gifted to me by my grandfather. I bought a bike, and the rest of the money I used for loan sharking, loaning to tempo drivers, lorry drivers, and the like, moved on to other things like setting up the first video news magazine in Kerala with a journalist friend who you will see on TV pretty much every day these days. And then went on from there to advising politicians on media management and election strategy. And we had a client who was the son of a chief minister. And so we used to be driving to Calicut pretty much every month doing that and having fun doing that. And then went on to do several other things, including producing telefilms for Doordarshan. And the like. So eventually, getting to med school, while at med school, I was pretty much everywhere except in the classroom. And so that's kind of, who I was. And so I went on to a business school after med school because I decided that I wanted to be on the business side of healthcare. And then even though I was fortunate to be working with some of the top consulting firms in the world, the independent streak in me was always urging me to start up something. And I would start up and I would fail. And some startups I started up twice, but I'm still failing. And but I kept doing that. And then I finally found an area where I could I could feel comfortable doing what I'm doing, make money in the process. And like Chandi alluded to early on, I could be my true self or who I am for 7 days in a week. And that's where I'm now.
That's impressive, Saji. So Saji, I think you have gone against the usual rule where you start as a doctor, you die as a doctor. You start in IT, you die in IT. But I think you have really being a doctor, you have done loan sharking, goat farming, and tried n different things. But end of the day, you are still happy, successful. Pretty impressive. Thanks, Saji. So next up, we have we'll move to George. So I would like to refer George as the all-rounder because he's a magician, he's an Ottanthullal artist, he's a marathon runner, he's a motorcycle maniac, and he has also held leadership positions in companies like IBM and Infosys, where he has lived and worked in multiple countries and markets, where he has gained experience in handling diverse cultures, which is very important as an entrepreneur. So George, these days a lot of startups are coming up in India. What are the opportunities and support systems that young aspiring entrepreneurs can explore?
Thank you, Fareed, and for the kind introduction, and good evening to all of you. addressing your question, look, I live in Bangalore, which is a startup hub and the center of many of India's most successful startups, I would say, and unicorns. A unicorn is a company which has reached a startup which has reached $1 billion. In fact, India is home to the third highest unicorns in the world. Now, for one, there is capital available, as in there are lots of people willing to put in money to back a good idea. Now, in this forum itself, most of us do invest in startups. So when I started a business, getting people to invest was never a problem I faced. And look, like all other members of this panel, I come from a middle-class family with no business background. Now, secondly, there is mentorship and good, solid advice that is available. And it may not be people you know. I've had many people approach me on forums like LinkedIn just to seek mentorship and advice. So I would say join these forums, get onto LinkedIn. It can be a very useful platform to connect. Thirdly, join networking organizations. I remember when I started my business, I joined an organization called BNI, which is an international networking organization which has chapters in pretty much every major city in India. And it would connect people through reference. It greatly benefited me. So, I would really suggest you join networking organization. Now, talking about opportunities, now we're seeing a lot of opportunities in India, particularly in e-commerce. We're seeing a lot of opportunities in the fintech space. And of course, all of this is enabled by technology. So coming from the tech world, most of the world I see is from there. And everything is tech today when you look at it, be it an Ola, a Swiggy, a Flipkart, a Byju's, etc. All these are essentially apps leveraging simple technology to solve a real life problem. That world still continues in my view. So pick up a small gap and fill it very quickly. I'll give you an example. I mean, now there is an app, many of you might have seen it. It's an app called My Gate. It's an app that simplifies life for everyone living in a gated community or in an apartment building, from residents to management committee members to security guards to facility managers, everybody. And it's an app, if you ask me from a technology perspective, I could have built it in 3 weeks, but it's the execution of that idea brilliantly. In fact, one of my friends is invested in it, and it's on its way to become a unicorn. So use technology to make new ideas happen. And of course, time to market or speed is key. The first mover normally takes most of the spoils. The other thing I would say is pick up a rising wave, not a one that is already risen. It's my personal experience. So if you actually look at certain technology areas, something like blockchain, for example, I think it's going to change the world in the way we trade, in the way we do business, in the way we interact, the way we use our finances, the way the currency itself will change. And I see a huge opportunity in something like blockchain. If you take an industry, in my assessment, healthcare is one segment which has significant potential to be transformed with technology. Smart apps, IoT gadgets. Look, this is an Apple Watch. I mean, this can, do so many things. There's so many things that can be developed for something like this. Wearables. So that's my view. Over to you, Vaishnav.
Thank you, George. What I feel is that there is one important thing, which young aspiring entrepreneurs can do, that they can identify their problems or gaps that is there in the industry and see them as opportunities which can help them move with the rising wave. So thanks, George. So Chandi, moving on to the next question. What are the characteristics or traits needed to be a successful entrepreneur?
Thanks, Vaishnav. I mean, listening to Saji, I think people will think that loan sharking and not getting into classes is an essential characteristic of being an entrepreneur. But I would like to assure you that Saji is an outlier. And while we all have respect for him as an entrepreneur, but in terms of coming back to characteristics, I mean, when you look at entrepreneurs, you can probably see a whole lot of very unique capabilities and characteristics that you can see in entrepreneurs. What I'll try and do is probably touch upon 3 or 4, which I think are very relevant. And these are ones which people can actually consciously work on and develop over time. And I think that'll probably be useful to the audience today. So the first one I would say is pretty much most entrepreneurs. I mean, entrepreneurship is clearly a risky business. And I think entrepreneurs are generally not very averse to taking risks. So they're happy to work with very limited information. And they have the self-confidence to deal with those kind of situations and move forward. They can probably see the end game, but they most of the time they don't know how to get there. But they're not too much concerned about it because they're saying that whatever the journey throws at us, we will deal with it, and they have the confidence to do that. So I think risk taking is clearly a very, very strong attribute. I think everybody should take risks proportionate to their age and capabilities. And I think that'll prepare them for the bigger risks that they face in life and their careers. The second characteristic I have seen common across a lot of entrepreneurs is, the ability to kind of deliver under extreme pressures. Entrepreneurship is a high pressure business. You're juggling a lot of balls at the same time. You're under a lot of stress. And what happens with a lot of people is that when you're put under stress, your thinking becomes very ordinary and very standardized. You lose all the creativity and all that. But I think entrepreneurs somehow are able to still, even under high pressure situations, they are still able to think differently and creatively and come up with solutions for their problems or deal with situations. So that I think is probably, a second characteristic which is very common. A third one I would call as adaptability. And adaptability is also probably very important in any other career. And that's really the ability to be in a completely unfamiliar environment and still give your best. And for a good entrepreneur, the geography doesn't matter, the language doesn't matter, the culture doesn't matter, the rewards don't matter. Wherever you put them, they will find a way to do their best. Not only will they do their best, they will also make sure that the people who are working with them also give their best. So, foreign territory doesn't really make any difference to them. They're capable of overcoming all those obstacles and still giving their best. So that's adaptability, and which I think is a very, very powerful attribute to have, even in a normal job. And the last thing, which I think is probably the most important one, which you see in every entrepreneur, is the ability to network and nurture relationships. I think entrepreneurs can actually spot people who they think will be of use to them in the future. They invest in those relationships. They do a give and take in terms of, taking help as well as giving help, so that they know that, and in your entrepreneurial journey, you will always have times when you need a lot of help from other people. They'll always have a set of people who they can call on to help them. And I think that's another very important characteristic of entrepreneurs. So just to summarize, 4 things that we spoke about. The first one is the ability to take risks. Second one is the ability to work under extreme pressures and still be very creative. Third one is adaptability. And the fourth one is the ability to network and nurture relationships. Thank you.
Brilliant thought, Chandi. So again, what I would like to say is these are traits which is not necessarily applicable to anyone who's doing a business. I feel this can be trained with students starting from their school days. I mean, they can start training themselves on all these traits, because this is definitely going to help them in their college life, maybe going at the workplace. All these characteristics which you said, starting from creative thinking, adaptability, risk taking, and even this can be applicable to their lives. When problems are being thrown at them, they can handle it in a way how entrepreneurs deal it. So I think it's a all 360-degree way of looking at things as an entrepreneur. It's not just about building a business, which you have clearly mentioned. Thank you, Chandi, for these insights. So next, let's move to Vijay. So Vijay, from your experience, how important are mentors in helping entrepreneurs? Have you had anyone who has helped you in your initial days? Also, I've heard about a program known as Externship program, which is going to be conducted by Loyola. So could you just explain a bit on that also?
Sure, happy to do that. But before I do that, I just want to make a passing remark here. I just keep smiling to myself quite a lot during the discussion, because I think when George, Chandy, and Saji speak, it is just fantastic, and I love what they're saying. But in my mind, I'm still relating to those boys that we used to fight with in school, and I'm not able to correlate these pearls of wisdom with that time. So that's why I keep smiling to myself if you're noticing that while I speak. But let me come back to your question, Tariq. I think what you talked about is about mentors, value of mentors. Have I had any mentors? And you also separately asked about the externship program, which I'm happy to share. To start with, on the aspect of mentors, and I think Chandy talked about that all of us need help at different points from people, which is so true because all of us have our strengths, but we also have our weaknesses. And the advantage of having good mentors is that it really helps us to navigate through some of these weak spots and also perhaps our weak moments. And this is not really only about professional life, it's also for personal life. It's not only for entrepreneurs, but it's just for anybody from all walks of life and all ages. I have been certainly fortunate to have very good mentors. And let me give you an example or two of some of these mentors and how it's helped. Now, you imagine this. Imagine you're running a very modest organization, such as the one that we have in Technopark. What is the chance that you can get a person who is acclaimed to be among the top 25 professionals in the country to come and mentor your business and to guide you? Very unlikely, I would imagine, right? Now, what if this person was one who has been acting with you in dramas, who's been fighting with you on the football field, who's been sharing your 25 paisa packet of nuts in school? And if he's been with you, Loyola, in that mode, is it possible then? Perhaps yes, right? I'm specifically referring to a classmate of mine by name Shankar Krishnan, who has been a phenomenal mentor. He's on the director board of our company, provides very valuable advice and guidance all the time, which is able to really take the organization forward very, very meaningfully. By the way, he is one of the speakers in the next session of LOBA on October 9th on management consulting, so don't miss that. But let me go back a little bit into what perhaps the Loyolites on this call can relate to and back to my school days. And Saji mentioned this before, and I know Chandy was very studious, but I wouldn't be surprised if George was in the same bucket as me and Saji. But I too was one of those students who was regularly playing truant, very mischievous, often kind of hauled up for creating trouble in class. Very frequently, we used to be taken up to the principal with complaints, and the principal at that time was Father C.P. Varki. I can see Saji smiling. Was Father Varki, who was a person who was really a legend and one of the greatest influencers from very many Loyolites. He's been a person who has subsequently also done a lot of programs for teachers and parents on how to bring up children. Now, coming back, each time I was taken with a complaint, Father Varki used to never make me feel guilty. Instead, he would treat me with a lot of respect. He used to keep telling my parents that true, he's mischievous, but he's all right. He's good at heart, and he'll go on to do very well in life. He perhaps was among the very few who thought that at that time, but he steadfastly kind of drilled that into me. He built very strong relationship with every child. He knew every child by name. If I played hooky and didn't do an exam, he would be home that evening. When I'm running at the Central Stadium, he would be there to kind of cheer for me. He would be there to bring banana chips to the NCC camp when we are there at the annual training camp in Pangur. Through all this, he built a very, very strong relationship, which slowly started to kind of be used towards influencing a person to better himself, because now you respect that person, you're prepared to listen to that person. Here's a case of how a truant boy who was pretty much written off as a no-gooder, who could well have been a student who never completed his basic education, with the support of good mentorship, was able to get past all that. So the value of mentorship is extremely, extremely high. And as George mentioned earlier, getting sound advice is available. Getting support is available. And if you're sincere, there is no shortage of help and support in that direction. Let me quickly also talk about the externship program. Tariq, you mentioned about that. This is something which is on cards and perhaps would have been running by now had it not been for the pandemic time. Now, this also supplements in some ways the career guidance programs that we are running. And many of us would have heard about internships. You've heard about summer internships where students take up a very specific assignment for a period of, let's say, a couple of years, and they deep dive into it. The externship is different. It is for school children, maybe for college children, not very popular here, but in a sense, it is something like the internship. It is not as intense. It is much shorter duration. In our case, it's about 5 days. And rather than deep dive into one problem that you work on, you get exposure to the different departments and different functions in an organization in a very friendly environment. Therefore, you're able to learn, you're able to understand that organization to that extent, that industry. You're able to relate as to, is this something that is good for you and something that might be aligning with your interest, and all in an environment of experiential learning. And there's a series of programs that have been planned by LOBA on this externship program, which Sudesh Arvind is driving. And it's got IT companies, it's got manufacturing companies, it's got hospitals, many of them. I'm sure it'll be a great opportunity and something that the students can look forward to. Thank you.
Thank you, Vijay. I think externship is kind of a program which is, first of a kind to be introduced. And I'm happy to know that LOBA is the one that is leading it. So Vijay, also I would like to, when you talked about mentors, I was thinking, I had a personal experience myself with the LOBA itself. 6 months back, there was an article which came about me and my startup in Indian Express. One of a LOBA member kind of recognized this. He sent me a message in WhatsApp. Say, Farik, I saw this. Would you be free for a quick chat? He called me back the site. He called me, and we spoke about 1.5 hours. He asked me about what I'm doing, what are the problems in my business, and I said when I randomly spoke up, majority of the problems that I'm facing. 1 hour down the lane, he cut the call. We thought we'll connect maybe after 1 month or 2 months. In a 1 hour, and I was added to a group known as the LOBA Batch Ambassador Group. 2 hours down the lane, I got a message from 2 grey hair boys. One of the grey hair boys sitting here, Agustin Chandi and Suresh Arvind. The thing is that me and Chandi now, looking back now, we have spent around 30 to 35 hours of Google meetings discussing, and he's kind of mentoring me on decision making. So he knows the business just like how I know my business. So he has dedicated the time. So the reason why I've said this experience is because help is available just within our LOBA network. So I would request, I would take this opportunity to request all the participants to reach out, to all of the people who's available. You'll have you can get the message or the number very easily from LOBA or from the school. Speak to us or anyone in this panel, to get any insights or any problems that you face. Yeah, so that is it.
Tariq, if I can quickly request, if your group is still active and Chandi is in it and Suresh is in it too, can you add me as well? I certainly would want to benefit from their wisdom.
Sure. Open, Saji.
We will charge you, Vijay, though.
For me, it's free. Yeah. So anyway, so before we move on to the next question, I would like to request all the participants to raise their questions in the chat box. I'm sure the chat box would be open for Q&A. We will definitely take up relevant questions towards the end if we have the time. So next, let's move on to George. So George, how do you address the fear of failure, and what can be done to mitigate risks while entrepreneurs start venturing out on their own?
Okay, Farik, I think your question has 2 parts to it. One is fear of failure, and the second is how do you mitigate it? I think for fear of failure, my experience is to act. Don't let fear paralyze you. Act on it, even if you have to pretend that you're brave. One of the greatest pieces of advice that I got is, however bad a situation is, see that the situation is bad, however, believe that it will get better. And that's a very important piece of advice. So when I was thinking of starting my business, I contemplated and thought about every possible thing that could go wrong, which in itself is not a bad thing. However, the fear was paralyzing me from doing anything at all. And I remember one of my co-founders, Bipin, he told me it's one of the best pieces of advice I ever got in business. He said, George, enough of thinking of all the failures. You put in some money, I will, and let us start. Best piece of advice that I ever got. Beyond a certain point, act and get going. Now, to mitigate the risk of failure, you got to prepare. Like they say, luck always seems to favor a prepared mind. So how do you prepare? One, make sure you understand what you're getting into and your motivations. In my case, I understood the business as I'd been in that space for over 20 years as a professional. Number two, make sure that your strengths, and herein I define a strength as what makes you feel strong. So make sure your strengths will play a big role in the success of what you're going to do. For me, it is my ability to be passionate, communicate that passion, inspire others, as well as tell good stories. All of it played a big role in my business as we were a people's business. Lastly, you can't mitigate failure 100%. You want to strengthen your ability to respond to it. As Chandy said, a successful entrepreneur or professional is someone who can handle stress through the ups and downs. So learn and cultivate habits that make you stronger to handle failure and stress. For me, it is simple. During the hard times in the business, I would wake up at 3:30 in the morning. I would wake up sweating, thinking about how I will make my payroll at the end of the month. I had no choice. I would get up and go for a jog at that time. And 15 minutes into the jog, I was fine. Or I would do some meditation, or I would do some yoga. Without those activities, I would not have survived. Lastly, failure itself, in my experience, is more often than not a good thing. Failure is not the opposite of success. If I translate every failure of my life into a learning, I will never be a prisoner of my past, but a designer of my future. I can say with my hand on my heart that my greatest learnings and growth have happened from failures. In hindsight, I remember, and probably I'm grateful for it far more than my successes. And lastly, companies hire people who have failed. I always do, as I know they have the maturity and experience from those failures. So if you don't have a genuine failure story with learnings, you better pray before you attend an interview. Over to you, Vaishnav.
Thank you, George, for your insight. I'm sure this can really help young aspiring entrepreneurs. So let's move on to Saji. Saji, how has Loyola contributed in your career journey?
Hey, thank you for that question. I would start off by saying that Loyola is in everything that I do. Not just career, but entrepreneurship and life in general, and relationships as well. So if I think about how and what we learn from Loyola outside the classroom, I would say I can rattle off a lot of things like leadership skills. I can say things like public speaking, youth festivals, the compassion that Father C.P. Varkey used to be drilling into us every time he spoke, a golden heart, as he would say, integrity and dignity of labor that comes from cleaning the toilets and sweeping the classrooms. Those are all lessons that have been very useful in life, in the corporate world and otherwise. But I just wanted to touch upon a couple of things here, and this may take a little more time than usual. But let's talk about the easy one first. In terms of the easy ones here, I think a lot of Loyolites are in leadership positions across the world in so many sectors. And so I think that's got a lot to do with the training we have in Loyola in terms of, let's say, elocution and public speaking and communication skills. I started off, in medical college. I was started off in political leadership. Actually, I was elected the counselor to Kerala University Union from med school. Then I went on to hold other organizational positions before transferring those skills into corporate America. But there's another one, skill that we don't talk about much, and I'll start off with a question for you to think about. It is a question about how does a Kada Prasangam named Sundaripatti, come to your help and support in corporate America in an entrepreneurial role. And I know many of you, the new generation, might be wondering, what the heck is this Kada Prasangam? So Kada Prasangam, my friends, to put it in a in terms that we can relate to these days, is basically storytelling with some songs along with it. And so at school, I used to be in pretty much everything at the youth festival, right? I was in mimicry, mono act, things like what we had called declamation. But my favorite thing that I did, I think once, was this Kada Prasangam named Sundaripatti. And Sundaripatti is a story, it's a tragic comedy and a love story of a dog, of Sundaripatti, And it had some musical themes to it too. I mean, one of the songs was Kannanirine Tata, Chuda Kannanirine Tata. That was a very old Malayalam song which was incorporated into the song side of the story. And so while Farik is looking intensely at the clock, so let me just quickly go on to the business implication of this. And this is something which is happening actually as recent as this week. Okay. So right now I'm in the process of applying for a 40 million loan to buy an asset. So we send the pitch deck to the bank. And the first question the bank asked, and this is not the first time the bank has asked this question, they've asked it in the past too. The first question they asked, and I think George alluded to this as well, was, what is your story? They did not look at the numbers, they did not look at anything. So they asked me, what is the story of this deal? And I'm like, flashback, familiar territory, Sundaripatti, Kannanirine Tata, So so what I want to say is storytelling, and George, you picked up on that too. Storytelling is important, and we don't teach that inside the classroom. But in Loyola, we had the opportunity to practice these skills, and those are very valuable skills. The skills that you get outside the classroom are very, very valuable. And I will stop with that, and I'll let you guys take it from there.
Thank you, Sachin. That was really interesting. So, Chandi, we would also like to hear from you about your favorite memories in school.
Thanks, Vaishnav. I think all the serious stuff about school has been covered now, so I'm going to take this as a fun question. Okay. When you study in a school for 10, 12 years, you're going to have a minefield of experiences, and I can go on for quite a while. But what I will try and do is limit it to a few, which hopefully have a link to today's topic of entrepreneurship. Okay. So the first thing I remember is that when we were in school, we used to be fined for speaking in Malayalam. And by that count, I think Sajib probably has racked up a fine of about $1,000 now, in my opinion, considering the number of Malayalam words he's used. But draconian as it sounds, being fined for speaking in Malayalam, I think we used to take a lot of pleasure in telling on our friends, whoever was speaking in Malayalam. The fine used to be about 20 paisa or 25 paisa those days. We sincerely hoped that part of the fine would be shared with us, but that never happened. But I think although the way it was done, probably some people have a difference of opinion, but I think the end objective was very clear. And I think if you look at students coming out of school across Kerala or even in most parts of India, you can say with reasonable confidence that Lylites on an average have probably a very good command of the language. And I think a command of language also gives you a lot of confidence, self-confidence. And that then allows you to take those risks that we talked about earlier in terms of characteristics and so on. The second memory for me is about the lunch breaks in school. And if I remember, I think it was 40 minutes or 50 minutes, probably 40 minutes, more like it. And we used to finish lunch
45 minutes, Chandy.
Sorry?
45 minutes.
45. So we used to, yeah, Georgie used to go back 5 minutes late. So he had 45 minutes, I suppose. Yeah. Yeah, so, we used to have lunch in about 30 seconds and then rush onto the football field. And the football field, there used to be about 15 games going on at the same time. So it was complete mayhem. And despite that, we were able to string a through pass to one of our teammates and score goals and have a result at the end of that lunch break. And I was thinking about this, and I'm saying an entrepreneur's day is very much like the football during lunch break in Loyola School. It's complete mayhem. You're struggling where in the middle of 10 or 15 businesses trying to compete for your space. You still have to find a way to make your business tick. What better experience than spending those 40 minutes of lunch break playing along with 10 other or 20 other teams on the same ground. I also remember the second trips, which was a more civilized form of football. But what I remember is that we used to, in the Loyola canteen in those days, we used to have something called a Loyola Cola. And we used to have Torino and Gold Spot. I think most of it is extinct today. But the memory is that, a 200 ml bottle of Torino, probably it was one or two of our classmates who could afford it at that point of time. So he would buy it, and 20 people would take a sip from that 200 ml bottle. And we would all feel very contented and happy at the end of it. Not that it would do anything to our thirst, but, it was a great feeling. And I'm thinking, what better example of adaptability in terms of living and managing with whatever resources, whatever is available to you and trying to make the best of it. And what better networking. I mean, if you're going to share 200 ml or a 10 ml Fanta or Torino with somebody else, he's probably going to be a good chum for the rest of your life. So there's another good memory from school. The last one I want to talk about is when we were in the 10th standard, one of our teachers, and he's no more, and I'm not going to name him now. He actually made a bet with the class saying that if all of you get a distinction in your board examination, 10th standard board examination, I will buy you all a biryani from Hotel Lucia. And Hotel Lucia in those days was the premium hotel in Trivandrum. On the face of it, it was a very, very safe bet based on our track record and what we had achieved till then, But to cut a long story short, when the results came, everybody had a distinction. And I'm not going to tell you how we did it. So the teacher came back and told us, look, guys, I can't afford a biryani from Lucia. Can you compromise and I'll buy you a biryani from Brothers Restaurant in Srikaryam? So after a bit of huffing and puffing and all that, we said a biryani is a biryani. Okay, we'll have it from Brothers Restaurant. And I remember, and all credit to the teacher, he actually bought the biryani. We sat in the Loyola canteen and ate it. But then, if you look at that incident and what then, I'm thinking of is that this is a wonderful example of the concept of stretch. And I think as entrepreneurs, we should all, set ourselves targets, which we think we probably have a 50-60% chance of achieving. Never set yourself something which you think you're very confident of achieving. And don't go to the other extreme also, set yourself something which you think you'll never achieve. So you have to be somewhere in the middle, because most people underestimate their capabilities and what they can do. So I think that incident in Loyola probably taught all of us the concept of stretch and how much we can achieve if we really set goals which are far enough. So these are 4 or 5 very interesting events, which I think, but to me, the king and the emperor of all memories is the friendship with the 70 odd people with whom we studied in one batch in school. Thanks to social media, most of us are still in touch. We have a WhatsApp group. We talk every day, and we behave exactly like school children in that WhatsApp group, even today. And I think if there is one piece of advice which I'll give all the Loyolites today, nurture these friendships with your classmates. They can be some of your biggest friends and assets, whatever journey you make in the future. Because school friends, for whatever reason, those are the people you spend the largest amount of time with in an institution mostly. And those friendships are really, really, those are friendships which are formed when you're like quite innocent and which you didn't have, when you probably didn't have too much of malice in your mind. But those friendships last. And, Georgie and I actually were classmates, and I invested in Georgie's company a few years ago. And so the only reason I invested was because it was Georgie. If somebody else had come and given me exactly the same proposal, chances are I wouldn't have done it. So I think it makes a difference, your classmates, and I think there's an element of comfort level. And when you look at all the experiences put together, that friendship is the most meaningful one, which you should really nurture going forward. Thank you.
Chandi, I should say you really took me back to school, especially the football ground where 30-40 games used to happen, 30-40 balls, 2 goal posts, and 100 people going behind every ball. Especially in our time, we used to have the ice cream soda. So that was the one which was very famous during our time. So thanks, Chandi, for that wonderful. So next up, Vijay, I'm sure you are one among the naughtiest person in school, or at least in your class. So we wish to hear your the funniest and the naughtiest things during your school days.
That's a tough one, because I'm not sure that sharing the naughty things will be appreciated by the audience here today. So I might have to probably censor that out a bit. But again, before I answer that, I just want to kind of thank Chandi. That really was a trip down memory lane. And I recall, I think everything that you said resonates so well, because batch after batch after batch, this will be the story, be it the football ground or everything else. And I recall this Torino, and there was a small packet that we used to get after the NCC parade on a Saturday afternoon. And part of the huge motivation for going and sweating 3 hours in the sun was that packet and that and that little Torino. But those really were fantastic moments and memories that you brought us back to. Tariq, on your question, well, there are a couple of things I can recall which were crazy. And let me tell you one of those. I mean, everybody likes to play pranks, and I recall, sometimes it can rebound badly. And there was one instance when it pretty much rebounded on me. So I was pretty active in sports, but I was a sprinter. So my events would be 100, 200. I might take the 400. I usually do high jump. So there are only 4 events you can join. But there was this event cross country, which was open. So it does not matter. You can take that irrespective of your 4 events. So I've never tried that. But in the 10th standard, I decided I'll just go by to see the event. It was a Saturday, it's a holiday. So I go by to school. And when it was time to start, I thought, why not? I'll also simply run. It doesn't matter. I can also just join. I can drop up whenever I want. So I also just join. Anybody can join. We start off, cross the Loyola school turning. I'm still running. And then I see this cycle shop where they sell cycles. They have cycles on rent, common in those days. So take one of those cycles, I start riding cycle, and then patting each guy who's already been ahead of me and saying, hey, bye bye, do a bit of cycling. After a while, I get tired cycling. Forget this fellow who is not tired running. I am tired cycling. And then I decide I'll come back. So I come back. These guys are still running. I return the cycle. And then I thought, why not do a pretense of being that absolutely fabulous cross-country runner. So I started running back. And then I reached the gate of the school. I'm dead tired. And then I started to run harder because I need to make it look real. This guy's got such a lead. Nobody else is in sight. And this guy who's least expected to be coming there at the start. We have guys like legendary guys like Sajid BR who are fantastic runners. And here's this bloke who's useless, doesn't have stamina, who's coming first. Everybody is shocked. And I come running full speed into the ground. By the time I reach the ground from the gate, I'm dead. I'm dead. But it's okay, right? It's just a prank. So I started to walk. And guess what? I told you about Father C.P. Varki, a principal who will take none of it. He thought I was acting smart. He thought I was boasting because of my lead. He said, run. And I couldn't walk. I couldn't move. And he said, no, you have to run. I tried to explain absolutely no way. And I recall I had to make that one full round running, which was so very difficult. And of course, finally, after all that I had to go and tell and appease everybody around. Lucky not to get hit by Father Principal. And he took it in good humor that, hey, listen, this is what I did. So that's one recollection of that time. But I do recall that even that little bit was such a torture for me. The other parts, if you really want some stories, but again, I don't think it's appropriate for this kind of a forum. I'm sure Saji will have a lot more. Maybe I could share too. I'm sure George does as well. But some of these, I think we'll probably have to keep it for a different day.
Sure. Thanks, Vijay, for that. So guys, I'm not seeing any questions being posted. So I would kind of, recommend all of you to, post whatever questions you have so that, we can take it, because we just have like one or two discussions that is left. So I would recommend all of you to post few questions, which can be discussed. So George, just, maybe your favorite memories also of school.
You don't want to be asking me that, right? So I mean, I would have broken a lot of the benchmarks, right, on the number of times I visited the principal or whatever. But I just want to share something. Essentially I believe that our growth and success come from certain breakthroughs in life, right? And I've had several. So I was just trying to think through what happened in school, and when analyzing about it, I want to share a breakthrough that I had that was in school in class 7. We used to have a period called LA. LA was what, Literary Association, is that right, Chandi? Yeah, it was called Literary Association. It's one of those entertaining periods once every week, where students would come and we had to, perform, tell a story or a joke or something like that, right? So at the end of every LA period, you decide who would be the performer for the next week. So when the teacher requested a volunteer for the following week, someone shouted my name. And interestingly, the entire class started laughing, as I had never, ever performed to an audience till then. This is class 7. Now, I felt insulted, but I also felt challenged, and I stood up and said that I would do it. Breakthrough. I came home, I told my mother and my brother. I remember my brother, who's also an ex-Loyalite, my brother taught me a mono act. I still remember it was enacting Bruce Lee's morning routine. It was a very funny mono act. So over the course of the week, I perfected every movement, every tone, every dialogue, everything through continuous practice. And then I came and performed in front of the class, and it was a thunderous surprise to the class and my friends. And of course, there was a lot of applause. Since then, to this day, I've always been on stage, doing well, collecting prizes. That one accidental breakthrough cultivated a love for stage and performances, which I continue to this day. More importantly, from a career perspective, it gave me invaluable skills and popularity at every stage of my career or life, be it making friends, selling to clients, or charming girls. I still remember in New York, I even got free drinks after doing a magic performance in a bar. Mr. Murthy, who's the founder chairman of Infosys, when I joined Infosys, he invited me to his house to perform for his kids. So did Nandan, another co-founder. So it helped me to build very valuable personal relationships with them and many others who became my mentors and friends. Most importantly, this breakthrough gave me this much needed confidence and competence to speak in front of people, communicate clearly, like I said, sell to clients, inspire people, and like what Saji was saying, tell stories. If there's one skill set that's so important to develop, is how to tell stories. Now, all of it are among the most useful skills I found in myself as a professional as well as an entrepreneur. Over to you, Vaishnav.
Thank you, George, for showing that practice makes man more perfect. Now moving on to our moderator Farik. I do understand that questions are not usually asked to moderators, but I'm sure that Farik can really shed some light to this question of mine. Like Farik, what kind of courses are available for young aspiring entrepreneurs? Like, does an MBA help them?
Thanks, Vaishnav, for this, for giving me an opportunity to answer one of the questions. I'll try to, define it in a way based within my capacity. So what I would say is, Vaishnav, I could say that, there are pretty much like 3 stages which can be usually followed by early stage entrepreneurs. But, I'm sure there is much more beyond that. But due to the interest of time, I'll just at least go through the first 3 stages. As you asked, doing an MBA, would it help or not? I would say yes. It would help you to understand the basics of what a business is. At least get familiar with the terms that is used in business. For example, if you hear a word marketing, so at least you know from that point what marketing means. So to that perspective, I would say yes, doing an MBA can help. But apart from considering my college days, where I had career options, there were no much courses that were available specifically for entrepreneurship. But now if you look at it, it's not the case. Even in India and abroad, you can see multiple courses that is available, like specializing MBA in entrepreneurship, venture development, innovation. So now and especially colleges which have a startup cell where they encourage entrepreneurs and give them ideas, help them convert to products. So I think the situation is much more evolved, considering my scenario. And then after that, like if you have gained a first level experience of what entrepreneurship means, or the basics of what the startup ecosystem does, the next stage I would say there is incubators. Incubators are organizations that actually helps entrepreneurs, early stage entrepreneurs, to convert their ideas into products, and they give them the exposure to what they are lacking. Basically, if I am not good in technology, but I know I'm strong at every other aspect, they would help me connect with mentors, can actually identify the gap and kind of help me where it is required. So that is a stage where incubators come in place. I would say an example is Kerala Startup Mission, which is part of the Kerala government, where they help entrepreneurs in scaling their business, converting idea to products. And once that is covered, I would say there are a lot of business competitions that is being conducted by bigger companies like Infosys, Tata Group, where you can go with your idea, kind of validate your idea, and probably can get free money there. It's known as grants. You get competition prices like 1.5, 2 lakhs, 5 lakhs, 10 lakhs, even 50 lakhs, which can give you free money, without giving any equity or shares of your, and you are not liable to anyone, which can help you in your in your early days, I could say. But overall, what I would say, Vaishnav, is it's like books and reality is kind of different. So like what you learn in books is not reality. So my school of thought, I would say, is jump into the well, use your knowledge, kind of figure out to get out of it or survive there. So that is the only action, as all our panelists said. That's how entrepreneurs are. So that's it, Vaishnav, from my side. Thank you.
Thanks, Farik, for giving us an overall idea about the courses as well as the stages in entrepreneurship. I'm sure this will really help the young ones. Now we again move to Chandi. Chandi, as an entrepreneur, how do one decide whether an idea is worth taking forward or not?
Thanks, Vaishnav. I mean, I actually think all ideas are very good. And, where ideas fail is obviously not as much at the idea stage, but after that, whether it is at implementation or, after that. I mean, I think the first measure of whether an idea is good or not is about how much confidence the entrepreneur has in the idea. Generally, we would expect entrepreneurs to be absolutely passionate about their idea. They would be totally in love with their idea. The idea should keep them awake at night. The idea should put a spring in their step when they wake up in the morning. It should energize them, and they should wholly and truly believe in the idea. So if the entrepreneur is not 100% confident about the idea, probably the idea is not ready. Okay, so that's the first point. The second point I would like to mention is that, when you think of an idea at the beginning, at the initial stage, and then eventually when you implement that, most of the time what you implement is very different from what you originally thought about. So the idea actually goes through a journey of transformation. So no matter how much the entrepreneur is in love with the idea, the entrepreneur should also be prepared to tweak the idea to make it fit for market. And I think if the idea has gone through a process of tweaking and evolution, chances are that idea is pretty good. So then the question is, how do you tweak and take the idea through the evolution stage? And that's where I think all the panelists have talked in detail about mentors. You talk to as many people as possible. Talk to everybody who you are confident will not steal your idea. Okay, so talk to peers, talk to friends, talk to teachers, talk to parents, talk to mentors, talk to other businessmen, talk to domain experts in the area that you want to pursue your idea. Talk to everybody, take their inputs and use those inputs to tweak and modify your idea to make it fit for the market. So if you go through that evolution process, and then your confidence in the idea will also be very good, then it's about implementation. Of course, a lot of things can go wrong in implementation, but I think the idea would have reached a stage where you can by and large classify it as a very good idea. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Chandi. I'm sure that evolution would work for many young aspiring entrepreneurs. So due to the interest of time, we would just wind up with the last discussion with Vijay. So Vijay, what's your message to our brothers in Loyola?
Thanks, Tariq. This has been an interesting session. I enjoyed listening to what the other speakers said. And on the subject of entrepreneurship, it certainly is a great option for people who are looking in that direction. There certainly are considerable risks involved, but the upsides are pretty limitless. If you're sincere and persistent, surely success will follow as well. And the joy or the freedom to kind of shape the course of things is something which I think is very exciting. So for those of you who are looking at entrepreneurship as a career option, it's certainly something which is absolutely worthwhile. I'm going to just take a quick minute to recall a passage in our school diary. There's something I learned by heart back then, which I remember. And it goes like this. It says, India will be what we are. Our thoughts and actions will shape her. Born of a fruitful womb, we are her children. Little bits of India of today, and yet also the parents of India of tomorrow. If we grow big, so will India be. And if we grow little-minded in outlook, so also will India be. So let me part with this thought that I hope that each of you grow big, do extremely well for yourselves in your chosen future careers, and that you maintain very high standards, very high value systems that Loyola instills in each of us. All of us are proud to say that we are Loyolites, and I wish you all the best. And thank you very much for your patient listening. Thank you.
Thanks, Vijay, for that wonderful message to our brothers. Thing is that we are getting short of time, so I would like to just take maybe a quick question from the Q&A that has been posted in the chat. So the question goes, it's from Ranjit. What is the conversion of knowledge to revenues? And what is your take on continuous learning? Maybe if Chandi can shed some light on that question.
Right. Thanks for the question. Conversion from knowledge to revenues. I wish there was a formula for that. I think, you can have all the knowledge in the world and you can still have no revenues. Sometimes, revenues come first and knowledge comes after that. It's not, none of this is a very sure shot relationship. I think for revenues to happen and profitable revenues to happen, a lot of things have to fall in place. Knowledge is certainly one component of it. I think we have probably talked and covered a lot of the other aspects related to that in terms of what you need. Even luck also sometimes plays a part. You have to be in the right place at the right time. So entrepreneurship is not about having a very structured, planned approach to something, which therefore guarantees a result for you. It doesn't work like that. It is not about studying very hard for an examination and then you know that, okay, if I study hard, I know I will get high marks. Okay, but entrepreneurship is not like that. There's so many things which can go wrong, and a lot of things are not in your control. So I would think that while knowledge is one component, lack of knowledge or having a lot of knowledge does not guarantee anything in terms of revenue or success from an entrepreneurship perspective. Okay. Sorry, could you remind me the second part of that question, Ferry?
Continuous learning.
Well, I mean, the obvious answer is, even when we're sitting in this panel discussion and talking, we're all learning from each other, and it's not a conscious process after some time. It happens. And I think once you pick up, as you move along your career, you will pick up that skill where, you know what to learn and you know what you don't want to learn. When you talk to people, when you listen to people, there are a lot of things that you register. I was teaching business to students in the equivalent of the 11th standard here in the UK. So they had a course in business studies as part of their school curriculum. And what we used to do in that course is that the students actually had to form a company and they had to physically develop a product or a service and then trade in it for about a year and actually, do a P&L and do a balance sheet and file tax returns and everything at the end of that 1 year, which gives them a full-on experience of business. And we used to go there as business advisors trying to tell them, this is probably the way to do it. And I find that even at the end of that session, after probably having been an entrepreneur for 15, 20 years, I still learn a lot. I think it's a very no-brainer. I think you always have to be willing to learn. But like I said, as you gain experience, what you want to pick on, what you want to keep aside. So your learning becomes a lot more selective and a lot more relevant. But yes, continuous learning is an absolute necessity all throughout your life, no matter what your career is or what you end up doing.
Just to add to that, a quick little thing. We talk about learning, but equally important is unlearning, because we pick up things along the way, and which we think is right, and that at some point we need to be able to let go. And for me, the biggest lesson from my experience in the consulting world is that no one is indispensable, which was not how I grew up as a doctor, right? I mean, in med school, the thought process was very different. You are the center of the world. You're the center of the life for all these patients. That's what we grew up in med school. But coming into the consulting world and the business world, I met so many people, really, really smart people, and they didn't have a lot of what we call knowledge, as we describe as knowledge that is measured by marks and grades and all that. So I don't want to go into a lot of that, but just a quick note there.
Yeah, Chandi Saji, I think it makes sense. So just a request before we wind up to all the participants is that do not take entrepreneurship too personal, because success is not basically crafted or designed for everyone. So what ultimately matters is like, if you're doing things what you love, even if it's doing a business, even if you be a singer, or even if you're being a doctor, lawyer, engineer, whatever it is, be happy in what you're doing. Make sure you do things what you love. As Sir Steve Jobs said, stay hungry, stay foolish. So I think that. So we can, it's by the interest of time, I think it's time to conclude. So I hope all the participants have benefited from it. We are definitely waiting for your feedback, which is one way we are conducting the polls. Or if there is anything more which we could do or improve better, I request all of you to write to us at explorelobha@gmail.com. So in a way we can.
Sorry for interrupting you. If you have a couple of minutes, since parents and teachers are in the audience, I just want to kind of just share probably a minute in terms of what is the role that parents and teachers should actually play in the life of an entrepreneur. And I think that's probably a very, very important topic. And if with your permission, if you give me a minute, then I'll try and quickly just run through that.
Sure, Chandy, please go.
So ahead. It's a tricky thing trying to talk to parents and teachers here, but what I wanted to say is that the immediate family, as well as the extended family, which includes teachers, mentors, peers, and all that, they're an absolute crucial factor in the success of any entrepreneur. We have heard things like families turning around and telling entrepreneurs, you don't have the skills to be a businessman. In our family, nobody has ever done business, so you shouldn't be doing it. You will destroy the entire fortune of the family by doing business. They even sometimes go to the extent of saying that you won't even get a good marriage if you're a business guy, and I think all these things actually create a conflict between the entrepreneur and the family. And I think what the family should try, and the larger family should try, is to maintain the channel of communication with the entrepreneur and be supportive and, try and be a positive influence. Because if you reject them outright, they'll probably switch off and they'll stop communicating with you. So what you really want is to support and encourage them so that they will come and talk to you about their challenges, about their problems, about their achievements, and then you're in a position to positively influence what they're trying to do as an entrepreneur. So I think that's a very important takeaway. Second thing I would say is that sometimes parents and teachers tend to underestimate their children when they try to become entrepreneurs and in terms of their careers. And I would always say that let them do what they like to do. Your role is more supportive and encouraging and giving them the information. And I think if somebody wants to be an entrepreneur, support them and encourage them, but encourage them also to talk to several other people, get all the inputs, vet their ideas, manage the risk, and then move forward. And, even in this panel, there are people, whose families have never had entrepreneurs. We are probably the first ones. So it's not something, somebody has to do it for it to be the first one anyway. So I think, therefore, teachers and parents have a very, very important role. And I'll also allow them to take small risks from the time that they're young. Because otherwise, if you're going to protect them, how long are you going to protect them? And one fine day, they will just go into the wide world and all the risks will land on them and they won't know how to deal with it. It is better that from a younger age, they are exposed to some pressures and some risks so that progressively, as they grow up, they are in a much better position to deal with their careers, whether it is entrepreneurship or not. Right? Thank you, Farid.
Appreciate that, Chandy, for pointing out these relevant points. So a big thank you to all the panelists, Saji, Augustine, Vijay, George, for your time. I would like to thank Father Principal P.T. Joseph, the organizers, Suresh Aravind, Binoy, Philippos, and the entire admin team who has made this session possible. And last but not the least, thank you to all the participants for being involved in the session. So I would request all of you to stay tuned till October 9th for our 10th career guidance session on the topic management consulting. So that's it from our side. God bless you all. Cheer Loyola Sons. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you, Farik and Vaishnav. You guys have been great too. Okay. Thanks for all this.
Thanks. Thank you all. Bye.